The first time I met Olammiri, I thought she was a goddess. She arrived in our village just after dawn, walking barefoot along the dusty path, her hair glistening like wet silk even though there wasn't a drop of rain in sight. Her beauty was impossible to ignore, skin smooth and luminous as river stones, eyes that seemed to hold the entire sky, and a voice soft as the rustling leaves. Everyone turned to look at her, and for a moment, the village seemed to stop breathing. I was the first to approach her. My name is Chika, and I had a knack for befriending strangers. "Welcome," I said, unsure why my heart was pounding so loudly. "Are you visiting someone?" She smiled at me, and it was like the sun breaking through the clouds. "I'm just passing through," she said, her voice musical, calming. "But maybe I'll stay, if I'm welcome." From that moment, Olammiri became part of the village. No one asked where she had come from or why. Her presence felt like a gift, and no one dared question a gift that beautiful. The women adored her, the children followed her like ducklings, and even the elders softened under her charm. But it was the men who couldn't take their eyes off her, especially the prince, Obiora. Olammiri and I became fast friends. She had a way of listening that made you feel like the most important person in the world. We spent hours together, walking by the river or sitting under the mango tree. She had a mysterious air about her, like she carried secrets too heavy for words. One day, as we sat by the water, she handed me a small pouch. "For you," she said. I opened it and gasped. Inside were small, glittering stones, gold and silver, smooth and cold to the touch. "Where did you get this?" I asked, bewildered. She only smiled. "The river provides for those who need it." At first, I thought it was just a strange way of speaking, but soon, I realized it wasn't just me. Olammiri gifted the poor and struggling families of our village with gold, silver, and jewels. No one knew where she got them, but no one cared. People began to whisper that she was blessed by the gods. Prince Obiora was the kind of man who believed everything should belong to him, especially beautiful things. He was captivated by Olammiri from the start, showering her with gifts and invitations to the palace. But Olammiri always politely refused, her eyes distant whenever he spoke to her. I knew the truth before anyone else. Olammiri wasn't drawn to the prince. Her heart belonged to Ekene, a humble fisherman known for his kindness and quiet strength. Ekene wasn't like the other men. He never sought Olammiri's attention, but she sought his. I could see it in the way her eyes lingered on him, the way her voice softened when she spoke of him. One evening, I found her by the river, staring at the water. "Why don't you tell him how you feel?" I asked. She sighed. "It's not that simple, Chika." "Why not?" She hesitated, then looked at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Because I'm not like you. Or him. I'm different." I didn't understand what she meant at the time, but I could see the sadness in her eyes, the weight of whatever secret she was carrying. It all came to a head during the village festival. The night was filled with music and laughter, and Olammiri was the center of attention. She danced with the grace of flowing water, her beauty shining brighter than the lanterns that lined the square. But the prince wasn't content to admire her from afar. He cornered her near the edge of the festivities, his intentions clear. "You belong to me," he said, reaching for her arm. Before I could intervene, Ekene appeared, stepping between them. "She doesn't belong to anyone," he said firmly. The prince sneered. "You dare challenge me, fisherman?" "I'll challenge anyone who doesn't respect her," Ekene replied, his voice steady. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the prince backed down, humiliated. Olammiri's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she looked at Ekene. That night, she asked him to meet her by the river. I followed them, unable to help myself. I watched from the shadows as Olammiri stood at the water's edge, her hands trembling. "Ekene," she began, "There's something you need to know." Then, before my eyes, she stepped into the river. Her legs shimmered and transformed, her skin glowing softly in the moonlight. Her tail emerged, green and silver, glistening with water. Ekene staggered back, his face a mix of awe and fear. You're not human," he whispered. "I'm a child of the water," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. "I've watched you for years, Ekene. I came to the village for you." He didn't speak, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. "I love you," she said, her voice breaking. "But I can't stay. My world isn't yours. I only wanted you to know the truth before I go." With that, she turned and began to slip into the water. "Wait," Ekene called out, stepping closer. She paused, hope flickering in her eyes. I don't know what to say," he admitted. "This is a lot." She nodded. "Take your time. I'll wait for you, Ekene. If you choose me, you'll find me in the water." Then, with one last glance, she disappeared beneath the surface, leaving only ripples behind. That was weeks ago. Ekene hasn't said a word to anyone about what happened, but I know he thinks about her every day. Sometimes, I catch him staring at the river, his expression torn. As for me, I still feel her presence when I'm near the water. Olammiri may have left, but her story isn't over. The river still whispers her name, and I know she's waiting. Whether Ekene chooses her or not, one thing is clear: Olammiri's love was as deep and unyielding as the river itself.